Here we are. Okay.
3, 2, 1, go!
Last down. Right. Last down. Okay. Good.
Dr. Heffernan.
Hey, Gene, oh, you have to turn on your camera over there.
My camera. I have no idea how to turn on my camera.
In
In Zoom. I have to go back into Zoom.
sorry about that.
Let's go home. Thank you, Nikita. Thanks to the library for letting this happen. Thank you to you all for spending your dinner hour with me. If you're really hungry, I brought treats. Dietitian unapproved, left over from Halloween. Please eat it so I can stop eating it. Throw it out. But there are better things in the back. There was Mary. It's really kind of you. So this is supposed to be sort of a book launch for my novel Fins. And it will be, but I'm going to spend a half an hour of your time on the background to this book. And I'm doing that because before I became an author, I had no appreciation for what goes into writing a novel. As an academic, when I was a productive member of society, I wrote a couple of reference books and I thought I was an author. And then I wrote a novel and I found out what it really means to be an author. Because when you get a book and you're about to read it, there's a history there. And it's a history that's can be tortured. It's a long and winding road with many dead ends and false blind alleys. And now when I pick up particularly a novel, I say, okay, somebody's very happy this wound up being published because they spent an awful lot of time and there were many instances when they thought this is never going to be finished. So I'm going to let you share my story up to the point where it got finished until, I was no longer convinced it was never going to be finished. And I want you, when you pick up a book now, to think that there's a person behind that book and they're really grateful you're reading your book. So this all goes back at least a dozen years when a colleague of mine, George Burgess at the University of Florida, and I published this little general reference book on sharks, 8th grade reading level, real science, not dumbed down, but simplified. And one of the major themes in our book was conservation, shark conservation, a number of other topics, but particularly that. We wanted to get that message across. This book came out and I decided I better go on a book tour. So I went to all the islands and I gave this presentation, 25 things you probably didn't know about sharks. And that was fun because I was getting to, instead of promoting the book, I was getting to impart information and a conservation message. And there were a couple of themes in that book that carried over into the novel eventually. One of it is that sharks are in trouble, they're overfished globally. And the information that the public is getting about sharks through various media generally is not helping the situation. There's very little effort out there, except within, among my fellow shark nerds, basically, talking to one another. We're not getting the message across that we really should be concerned about the status of global populations of sharks. And that goes to novels about sharks and it goes to movies about sharks. So those themes were in the Shark General Reference book and wound up in Fins. But there was another theme or factoid or fun thing that came out as I was researching for the shark book and subsequently, is that a dozen years ago, you had to really look to find shark schlock, kitsch, junk, toys, costumes, things like that. That has changed in the last 10 years. You can't go into a gift shop anywhere, at least in this country, and not see some, stuffed sharks, all sorts of stuff, which ought to be a good thing, except that I'm not convinced the message that's being brought across is the one I want. And for example, just a couple of weeks ago, Judy and I were in Houston with our grandkids, And we went to this very upscale toy shop in their neighborhood, which is right near Rice University. And there were the usual shark stuffed animals, and there's shark kites and all sorts of stuff. And then on one of the shelves, there was this big box with a shark on the front called Shark Lab. I thought, oh, cool, Shark Lab. That means it's an educational toy. And it was, it comes with a VR headset, virtual reality headset. I didn't put it on. I have no idea what was in it. But then I looked a little closer and I got a little worried because, for example, the first thing that you notice on the cover is here's a white shark with the gaping maws, the whole thing. And the inside of the mouth is blood red. Okay. White sharks don't have blood red mouths. They have white mouths. They're white sharks. They have white mouths. So this is the first indication there was something wrong here. The second one, I looked a little closer on the side of the box, and there was this, a 10-inch megalodon, the giant shark that's been extinct for 5 million years. A skeleton that the kids can put together and learn about megalodon. The only problem is sharks don't have rib cages. We have rib cages to protect our lungs. They don't have lungs, they have gills. So whoever put this thing together didn't read the book, basically. And made me again concerned that the message that we're getting across isn't necessarily the right one. We're just going with the fantastic stuff. So sharks are in trouble. The factoids. This is a number that's probably got error bars as big as it is, but the estimates are that globally we are looking at a decline of 70% over the last 50 years, over the last 5 decades of shark populations all over the place. They've declined more than 70%, some of them as much as 90%, depending on the species. And particularly the ones that if you were to ask a 10-year-old to name 5 sharks, all 5 of those would be in this list. Oceanic, the large sharks that swim across oceans and up and down our shorelines. And 3/4 of them are at risk of extinction, which is basically saying they're way down in numbers. So these are the facts that have those of us in the shark community very much concerned that we want to educate the public about. So where are they getting their education? Well, one of the places that the public has been getting its education about sharks is through novels. And unfortunately, Jaws started it all. Jaws was the first serious novel about sharks that the public encountered. There were some books out there, I read. But what Jaws did, and Jaws now is celebrating this year its 50th anniversary, 5 decades. That's the impact that Jaws had basically on sharks worldwide, in addition to fishing. But people started going out and killing sharks because of Jaws. There haven't been a large number of serious novels about sharks since Jaws. There is, though, coming out next month on the 50th anniversary. We'll get there. Here is the prequel to Jaws. Before there was Jaws, there was Quint. Quint was the shark fisherman in Jaws. And the logline, the summary, you already know the end of his story. Now find out where it all began. And I put this in the category, I'm ordering a copy, I haven't read it yet, but I'm putting this in the category of serious shark books. Just trying, probably a book with a plot, as opposed to a book just, designed to frighten you more than enlighten you. There are many shark novels, and they're all shit. Because all they do, well, there's some themes. Okay, megalodon, bloodbath, horrible reality, a top secret government experiment. Anyway, that's one of the tropes. Mad scientist producing a shark and it escapes and terrorizes a community. Vacationers, riptide, vacation too busy to notice 26-foot shadow, lurked in search of prey. That's another theme. Voluptuous young women in 2-piece bathing suits on vacation. Nobody here has to worry. Okay. Never mind. Helicoprion, which is actually was a fossil, a very prehistoric. Series of violent shark attacks off the shores of Northern California. Mega, there's something in the deep, something large, hungry, and prehistoric. Swallowing submarines, that's another thing. And then Steve Alton came out with Meg, which is another theme is nuclear explosion and megalodon, this shark that's been extinct for 5 million years, or at least 1.5 million, 1.5 million years. There's a nuclear explosion and it ruptures a barrier between us and the Marianas Trench, and the megalodon comes out. And so Alton is four. This is a franchise. And the fourth one, tellingly, is that the dominant megalodon siblings, now we have, not only do we have more sharks, we have young sharks, have escaped the Tanaka Institute, another mad scientist, and escaped to roam the Salish Sea.
Oh my
Oh
God.
my God. Or put us on the map.
Yeah, very good. I'll remember that one. Who swims around here? It's not who vacations here.
Not anymore.
Okay, they're big enough to attack the ferry. That's a good theme. That's a good theme. Attacking the ferry. Okay, assuming the ferry's running. So they go right to Anacortes and get them at the dock. Yeah. So so we see this repeated over and over again. Interestingly, Peter Benchley, who wrote Jaws, regretted his depiction of sharks, and he became a very conservation-minded in his latter years. He died just a few years ago. This is a perfect example of an abuser. Here he goes out and he writes this book that causes all sorts of problems for sharks, and then he apologizes, and then he goes on and he writes some more books that sort of have the same thing. There's one called The Deep, and in that, actually, the monster is a more eel, another one called The Island. And then I think the last novel was called White Shark. It wasn't about a white shark, it was about a German submarine that had this mechanical thing inside that escapes and starts destroying people. So eventually apologized, and then he abused again. So I don't forgive him. Maybe I should. Oh, he made a lot of money. So it's upsetting that the novels that are out there about sharks portray a very bad image, but most people don't read novels. Most people don't read. I mean, it's a frightening statistic. I got this from Jan Crossan. 40% of college-educated Americans never open a book after they graduate. Wow. So we are not in that universe. I know that for a fact. But people do watch movies, and there are a lot of movies out there about sharks. And we can go back to the granddaddy of them all. Like a year and a half later, we had Jaws. And Jaws, here's the original movie poster. We have the main characters, we have scenes from the movie, even though there's the blood red background, but it's sort of an accurate depiction of what the movie was about. But if you go and you Google Jaws movie posters, there are dozens of them because it was released over and over again in different countries, and I don't know how it is, but there were all sorts of posters produced for the movie. This is one of sort of the Alfred Hitchcock theme of the birds, with that great script. And then this was probably my favorite one, because we now have the young voluptuous woman in the two-piece bathing suit. Oh, here she is. And there is nothing in the book nor the movie of a shark so big it could swallow a person whole. But somehow, in order to get her in the picture, because in the original book, you really can't make out that the young woman is swimming naked at the surface of the water and is about to be attacked, is unclothed, even though she is. So this is what carries on now with almost all of the shark movies. This is not to say that nothing has happened since Jaws. There have been, in fact, coming out in the next year, there's a documentary about the making of Jaws, and it's being filmed in Martha's Vineyard, which is where the original movie is filmed. And it is apparently the making of that movie was an absolute disaster. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. It's amazing it was produced. And then just this last year, there was a play on Broadway called The Shark is Broken that's following the same themes of all the problems that Spielberg had producing this movie, everything that went wrong. So there has been follow-up to Jaws that you could almost call literary if you wanted to, at least interesting. But there have been sequels to Jaws. Neither Spielberg nor Benchley had anything to do with the sequels. These are people just capitalizing on it. So we had Jaws 2, we had Jaws 3D, and then Jaws: The Revenge. And throughout these, although it didn't occur in the original one, we now get to the same theme. Always goes up. Except in this point, they actually got the teeth right. On the Jaws book, the teeth are all wrong. I probably should have used that. These, the teeth are almost right. And there have been what I will call serious shark movies in the last 50 years, actually a lot less than that. But again, they have the theme, 47 meters down, 2 scantily clad voluptuous women are in a shark cage that gets parted from the surface and they have to swim to the top, and there's a white shark that's going to eat them. Deep Blue Sea, it's not a 2-piece swimsuit, but she's a scientist, and that's not a white lab coat. So they're kind of exploiting that theme. And then Holly Berry, a beautiful woman in Dark Tide, which takes place in South Africa. At least the movie poster again goes with the accepted theme, or I don't know if you want to call it accepted, the theme. And then we have Sharknado. And this set the stage for probably the worst onslaught of bad shark movies. Sharknado, I think there were 5 sequels after the first one. They made this, you talk about a franchise. They made gazillions of dollars on this, even though it was terrible. It was so bad, it was good. So there have been, this is just a sampling. If you Google 25 worst shark movies ever made, these will show up, and so will another dozen or 15 or 20. And they all basically are following the same theme of a mad scientist producing a monster who escapes and attacks a scantily clad voluptuous woman on vacation. And just over and over. Anybody could write one of these, although some of them go a little far. In this one, they got there two scantily clad women in that one. Jurassic shark, Sharkula, cocaine shark. That's actually one of the newest. That and Black Dragon Femur, the 2 newest ones. And this is, there's something in the water. The sharks are eating cocaine because we're flushing cocaine down our toilets. And every one of these are designed to scare people and to be afraid of sharks. Again, Spielberg truly regrets how the bloodthirsty portrayal of great white shark in Jaws contributed to a sharp decline in the animal's population. And it did. Right after Jaws, the movie came out, people started going out targeting sharks, catching them, just because they were afraid of them. Another abuser, it's not like Spielberg stopped producing any movie that was designed to scare you. Jurassic Park, at least it wasn't a shark. I don't think the tyrannosaur populations are in any danger right now because of that particular movie. But Spielberg went on still to roll with horror, terrible animal movies. So I consider him another abuser. Okay, some facts about sharks. I gave you that 70% number. Estimated worldwide, and this number again has error bars around it. It could be plus or minus 100 million for all we know. But this is the number that keeps appearing, and I've seen actual analyses of the number, and it's probably close to accurate. That 100 million sharks are caught every year, and 2/3 of them are caught primarily to make shark fin soup for fins.
What does it taste like?
I don't know. But it is a major industry, primarily in the Orient, in Asia, primarily Hong Kong and China, England, China. But it's $1 billion industry. And what's going on is that sharks have fins. The fins are supported by collagen fibers. You cut off the fins, you boil it down. The collagen fibers and fins are used as a thickening agent, but most of the soup is actually chicken soup. Usually they strain out the fins because you can't chew them. They're too like that. And what happens, why this is so terrible, I'm not against fishing, I'm not against commercial fishing if it's done in a sustainable manner, but it isn't, because what happens is they catch the sharks, they cut off the fins, and then they throw them back alive. So we have a shark that can't swim, lying on the bottom. It can't breathe because he can't swim. Most sharks have to keep moving to breathe. And he's just, it's like putting out bait for crabs and other sharks. And so he's slowly drowning and being eaten alive is what happens. So, and sharks do feel pain. It's a whole nother story we can go into. So it's a horrible practice. And it's illegal almost everywhere. And still, it's $1 billion industry. And so here are just some examples from just the recent press. 28 tons of fins seized. Imagine how many sharks, because one of these fins weighs a couple ounces when it's dry. A ton shark fins in Brussels. 200,000 shark fins Ecuador. Large shipment in the Maldives. 10 tons of sharks in Mexico. Miami Airport, 5,000 fins, half of which were CITES Appendix 2. This is the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. These are animals that it's illegal to trade. And then Indonesia sea shark fins destined for Hong Kong. So you can get an idea from this picture. These are all fins that are on this side of the string. But we've even got in Texas, we have a fin bust here. And it's almost laughable how small the fins are, but it's great that it got publicity. The other thing that's kind of humorous about this, that's all cocaine. And somehow the news article focused on the shark fins. I think that's a good thing.
But I don't see the sharks on the car.
That's because they throw them back in the water.
Just the fins.
Yeah,
are on the sidewalk.
yeah, just the fins. And the reason, and I actually get into it in what I'm about to read, is that fins don't have to be refrigerated. They just are hung up to dry. They take up very little space, and a shark carcass takes up a lot of space and it has to be refrigerated. So, and you get a lot more money for fins than you do for shark. Shark meat, you get $1 a pound, maybe. Fins, you get many dollars a pound.
But you can eat shark meat, right?
Oh yeah, and I've eaten shark meat many times, and it's really quite tasty. So are stingrays. In fact, many I should say, I know of some restaurants that will take stingray wings and take a cookie cutter and cut them out and sell them as scallops because they taste that good. I was at a restaurant, a seafood restaurant with a fellow fish behaviorist, and he ordered scallops, and he cut one open, and he looked at it, and he called the waiter over, and he says, "I want to talk to the chef." "Yes, sir." He brings the chef out. He says, "This is not a scallop. This is a stingray wing." "Well, how do you know that?" "Well, in a scallop, the muscles go up and down because scallops use their muscles to close their shell. So the fibers are oriented vertically. In a stingray wing, the fibers are oriented horizontally, and his scallops had horizontal fibers." He didn't get his money back. But he asked the chef, "Well, where did this come from?" The guy said, "A truck." So things are improving in terms of outlawing this, although we're having trouble outlawing. But just a few years ago, Canada became the first G7 country to ban shark fin imports, and following on the footsteps of a civilized country to the north, in 2022, the U.S. Congress passed legislation banning U.S. shark fin trade. You can't catch sharks in our waters.
Only the House passed.
Well, I'm sure the Senate. Okay, good point. Yeah, I know it's now law. I'm trying to remember the name of the law. I've seen the law in the books and even read it. So it's a good thing. And states are now getting in, and Hawaii was the first to ban shark finning in 2022, as I recall. So we were on Kauai in exactly 2 years ago, January 22. We were out on a pier, fishing pier, and this poster was duct taped to one of the posts on the pier, and it said that you can no longer catch a shark in Hawaiian waters. And this is exciting. This is great. We've been back 3 times since then. I have yet to see this poster up anywhere else, so I don't know if the message is getting across to the public. I'm hoping it will, and I don't know what the enforcement is like. I haven't seen any news article saying that somebody was busted for catching sharks. But we're going to Kauai tomorrow? Tomorrow, yes. I'm sorry, Molokai tomorrow. I'll be looking. So what we have now is the fact that sharks are in trouble. They're in trouble because they're fishing, primarily to cut their fins off to make shark fin soup. Novels about sharks are not helping the situation, not educating the public the way I'd like to see it happening. Movies are even worse at it. And so as a result, I decided to do something about it. And I wrote a screenplay called Undead Sharks, sort of following the zombie theme. It was going to be a horror movie, sharksploitation movie. I found a font that was kind of scary. That's the Harry Potter font. If you don't know. And the idea was, so here is screenplay, the summary that you use for pitching your screenplay. It's called the log line. So this is the log line. Finless sharks discarded as dead. Wreak vengeful havoc on the fishermen who mutilated them. The carnage escalates until a brilliant, beautiful, beleaguered forensic technician discovers their secret and, risking probable death and certain dismemberment, reunites the fins with the finless. I promoted this screenplay. I shopped it around. I entered contests. It got nice reviews. It even moved along in one of the contests, but nobody wanted to produce it. And so, like 99.9% of all screenplays that have ever been written, it died a horrible death. It winds up on the shelf because the screenplay doesn't get put into a movie. It never surfaces again. There's nothing going to happen. It's dead. So
It lost its fins.
and more, yes. So I kind of got tired of shopping the screenplay because it's that's self-promotion. It's CD. It's what I'm doing with you right now. And I was becoming increasingly interested in orcas, or in a lot of events that were happening in our waters. Including Tahlequah in 2018, carrying her dead baby around for 17 days and 1,000 miles, and having help from her family members with the dead, decomposing baby. I had this idea of an orca novel, and there had been a dead baby orca in that. And I decided I've got to write an orca novel, and I did. So that's getting back here. This came out in 2021. In the human realm.
So what are all the kinds of them?
Oh, you can come and look at it. You can look at the medallions. It won 2 national contests for animal fiction and was a finalist in 2 contests in contemporary and literary fiction. So it was well received.
That's very good. Congratulations.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. No, that's great. So now I've got a novel that I have to promote. And again, it's such an unseemly task. Iris, how much fun do you have marketing? None.
All of it.
Yeah.
All of that.
Really, it isn't, writing is fun. It's challenging. You get to be creative. You rewrite. You're happier the farther you go along. And then you wind up trying to basically promote your book, sell your book. And that just doesn't feel good. It feels dirty. So to avoid having to market anymore, I decided to turn the screenplay, the Undead Shark screenplay, into a novel. I had the whole story. I had the outline of the story. All the details were there, except screenplays are about 110 to 120 pages long. That's, they're limited to that. And half of that is directions, who's talking and what's the scene, etc. So there's not a lot of meat in a screenplay. So I decided I've got it all here. I'm going to flesh it out into a novel. And thus was born Fins. Which brings us to this evening. Fins is an unabashed ripoff of Jaws. I tried to get access to the actual font that was on the cover, but apparently it's proprietary. So I came up with something as close. It's called Amity Jack. Amity was the island where supposedly Jaws takes place. So that's Amity Jack. And then Fins is a novel of relentless terror. Jaws is a novel of relentless terror, and Fins is a novel of relentless satire. The whole book is a spoof on the sharksploitation genre. It's shark friendly and mostly humorous, with a conservation message, which was the whole purpose. Which takes us to my reading for the evening. This is the star of the show. This is a sand tiger shark. If you go to a public aquarium and they have a large tank and they have a shark swimming around, invariably there'll be one of these because they're very docile. They look scary because they have these long, slender, pointed teeth. Well, they've got those long, slender, pointed teeth because they ate fish. They eat fish. And in order to catch a slippery fish, you have to have sharp, pointed teeth. If you're a white shark and you're chopping seals apart, you have different kinds of teeth. But this is the perfect dentition for catching fish. And then for some reason, it's the only shark I know, they swim around with their mouth open. And so they're scary, quote unquote. They often are shown when people are trying to find a picture of a scary shark. They show a sand tiger. These are also your 10-year-old boy's favorite shark because, again, unique to the species, they go to the surface and they gulp air and transfer it into their stomach to increase their buoyancy. And then when they want to sink, they fart. Okay, and so we will get to the reading. Mary, can you give me more lights? Yeah. So, I'm sorry? I have no idea. I've never seen it happen. I've only read about it. Oh, please eat those. Yeah. So I've got about a 10-minute reading from the beginning of the book. And what I put up here is just to show you how badly I ripped off Peter Benjamin. Okay. Oops. I've got to get to page 1. Reading this to myself over here.
Where'd you get that shirt?
Thrift store in Poolsbo.
Wow.
I love thrift stores. Okay, so the book starts off with an epigraph. An epigraph is a little quote or something at the beginning of a book. And this is from Monty Python's Flying Circus, title of one of the movies. And now for something completely different. This epigraph has double entendre, 2 meanings. One, for folks who read my Orca novel and liked it, this is nothing like the Orca novel. I'm warning them. This is frivolous, humorous. The Orca novel had some emotional weight to it. This is lightweight, exceedingly lightweight. So it's not a bit like the Orca novel. And then also, the something different is also my attempt at flipping the scene on the shark exploitation. This is completely different from all of the shark books that I've written because it's shark friendly. And I violate many of the dicta for good writing. I have both a preface and a prologue, just because I was having fun with it. So preface. The lower edge of the blood-red sun touched the ocean's surface. Megan Woodbridge shielded her eyes against the glare. She grew increasingly anxious as she found it harder to pick her slender 7-year-old daughter's form out from among the larger children. Tashiana tended to gravitate toward older kids because I always wanted a big sister. Tashi floated noticeably as each wavelet passed, the other children still in a depth where they could stand. The shouted taunts of the boys were just audible over the screams of the girls as they exchanged volleys of splashes. One splash rocketed straight up, higher than the others. All activity in the water stopped. Did you see that? Someone behind Megan shouted. Author's note. It would have been so easy to just do the above. Another predictable shark horror tale with an inciting incident, conflict, lots of gore, resolution, the mutant shark must die, somewhat believable characters, mad scientist, renegade female team member, headed for the Discovery Channel or worse. Hell, ChatGPT could do it in a nanosecond, but that would have defeated the whole purpose. Prologue. Quote from a colleague of mine, Dr. Christopher Lowe, California State University Long Beach Shark Lab. Quote, sharks are just more honest and predictable than people. Okay. The great fish moved noiselessly. I couldn't, rip off. You only allowed 5 words of a quote before it becomes plagiarism. The great fish moved noiselessly through the dark waters, her mouth slightly open, allowing oxygen-rich water to flow over her massive teeth and gills. Filtered moonlight, broken by occasional clouds, passed down through the water, permitting her to search with all her senses, both the surface above and the upward sloping bottom below. She hadn't eaten in days, 29 by her count to be exact, which was why she had ventured this close to shore. Her hunger had grown as her 2 developing young neared their time of release. They needed to be nourished internally before they turned on one another. Moving stealthily near the bottom, she heard, then spotted, a creature at the surface. Backlit by the moon, its silhouetted outline came into focus. One of those creatures that moved noisily with two long side fins and two even longer tail fins. 30 years of experience had convinced her to avoid them. These were enemies she had barely escaped numerous times when tempted by a variety of dead food they dropped in the water. Embedded inside were sharp, hard, shiny, curved objects that pierced her mouth, often breaking teeth. Their intentions were all too clear. The creature at the surface wasn't worth the risk, despite the ease with which it could be taken. A nice fat seal would do fine and be less problematic. Even a fish would be good, if large enough. She entered an area that consistently held abundant prey, an anomaly in these depleted waters. Her electrosense told her a stingray was resting on the bottom, probably buried a few inches under the sand, revealed by the pulsing of its breathing. She was swimmingly leisurely down to grab it, despite its nasty barbed, hey, no pain, no gain, when she heard the loud rumble above. Looking up, she saw one of the large, pointed shapes that thrashed along the surface, churning it up and leaving a foul-smelling slick. Those tempting, threatening, dead food objects often fell from the same shapes, sometimes on long strings. She turned and, with a powerful sweep of her crescent tail, fled for deeper water. The kids would just have to work it out between themselves. Time to get the hell out of Dodge. Chapter 1. A rundown fishing boat, white with numerous rust stains, motored noisily over the glassy water. Moonlight, filtered by diesel exhaust, revealed Stinky Wrinkle in fading black letters across the stern. No home port identified. In the wheelhouse, Agatha Garman squinted at a video screen that showed the boat's location. A beefy, red-faced woman with short, dark hair, Agatha wore full captain's regalia, navy blue with gold tassels, and a hat to match. She leaned on a short, odd-shaped, knobby walking stick. Her first mate, a gaunt, tall, dark-bearded man in a yellow slicker and white rubber boots, watched the screen intently. The chart plotter cast a green glow on their faces. A dashed line on the plotter showed the boat's movement across the water. The boat was headed toward a rectangular area outlined in red. Large letters inside the rectangle read, Cousteau Memorial Marine Protected Area. Absolutely no fishing. Holy shit, we're fishing there? The first mate asked somewhat hesitantly. Why not? Replied Agatha. It's about the only place that still has sharks. Hey, you're the captain. Agatha spit tobacco juice into a small silver spittoon, pulled down a microphone, and bellowed into the intercom. Get ready to fish, boys. All lights out except red headlamps. Kill the running lights, everything. We're going dark. Out on the deck, a dozen men, a mix of Asian, Hispanic, and Anglo, scrambled around preparing the fishing gear. They all sported headlamps, yellow rain gear, and white rubber boots. They tripped over one another in the half-light and swore good-naturedly in their excitement. The men started paying out line off a large drum near the stern, baiting large hooks with malodorous chunks of fish. They tossed the hooks overboard as the line trailed out behind the boat. The deck crew chief, tall, muscular, rowdy Wagner, reached up to a pole at the end of the line and turned off a blinking light. He flipped another switch as the pole splashed overboard. Light off, locator activated, and bait's on the bottom, skipper. He spoke into the mic attached to his wide yellow suspenders. Agatha's voice boomed through an overhead loudspeaker. Okay, let's soak those baits for an hour, then haul. The crew members sat down on nets and buckets, chatted quietly, told jokes, laughed, smoked. Some sharpened long, white-handled knives. Staring at the chart plotter, Agatha watched a flashing light mark last hook well inside the borders of the protected area. When a digital clock on the screen changed to 2359, an alarm buzzed. Okay, boys, time's up. Let's haul them in. Rowdy pulled the hydraulic lever and the large drum winch started retrieving cable. The first few hooks came aboard, still baited and without fish. Then the first shark appeared. Fish on, Rowdy shouted. They hauled a large shark aboard and crew members jumped on it, slicing off fins. The shark thrashed about, spurting blood. Severed fins, still alive and trembling, were tossed into a plastic tub, one on top of the other. The shark was slid aside, flailing and bleeding. Every hook came aboard now with an identical shark. The deck was soon covered with bleeding, squirming, finless sharks piled to one side as the tubs filled up with quivering fins. The boat reeked of the distinctively metallic odor of blood. A skinny kid in his late teens grabbed a small aluminum bat and approached the shark. "Hey, Greedy, what the fuck are you doing?" Rowdy shouted. The kid looked confused, staring at the bat in his hand, then at Rowdy. "I was going to kill the shark, Rowdy." "That's not a shark anymore, kid. We call them logs after we chop the fins off. The logs go back overboard. Anyway, you can't kill those things. Their brains are too damn small." "You mean we just dump them back while they're still alive?" the kid asked. "Sure, you got a problem with that?" Rowdy replied. I guess not. They're just dumbass sharks, right? Right. So don't lose any sleep over it. They'll be dead enough soon enough when the crabs and the other sharks find them without fins. The squirming sharks were slid overboard one after another, the crew sometimes directing a snapping shark at another crewman's feet, seeing who waited the longest to get out of the way. The game was made more challenging as the deck became increasingly slippery from the pools of shark blood. Rowdy noticed a large shark with a swollen belly lying in the shadows. "Damn, we missed one. You're a big girl, ain't you?" He grabbed a knife and quickly sliced off the shark's side fins. The shark sprang to life, snapping wildly. As Rowdy backed away, the shark lunged over the side, its tail still intact. It joined the other sharks as they thrashed and sank slowly in the blood-stained water, piling up on the bottom. Crabs and hagfish immediately converged on the pile. The tormented sharks twisted and squirmed desperately to avoid being eaten alive. Back on deck, the crew closed the fins down, packed them into large plastic boxes, and stacked the boxes on deck. When the catch was stowed, the greenhorn and Rowdy leaned against the stack of boxes, cigarettes in hand. "Hey, Rowdy, why don't we cut the logs up and sell shark steaks?" "Simple economics, kid. It's all about overhead. Sharks take up reefer space and aren't worth much. Fins don't have to be kept cold and are worth a hell of a lot more." The greenhorn, pointing to the fins, asked, "Okay, but who eats this shit?" "Oh, it's all the rage in Hong Kong, especially at wedding banquets. It's also supposed to be an aphrodisiac as well as a good luck food. These fins are going to help make some lonesome bachelors at a Chinese wedding get lucky." Rowdy twisted his head and talked into his lapel knife. "We're good down here, Skipper. Catch is stored." "What's the catch, Agatha? What's the count?" Agatha asked over the loudspeaker. "Well, things were happening pretty fast, ma'am. We put out 30 hooks and I think only 3 were empty, so I'd say like 27 sharks plus or minus." "Not bad," Agatha said. "At 4 fins per shark, that's, let's see, 108. What kind? How big?" "Kind of weird, ma'am. Hard to tell it being dark. Probably sand tigers, all the same kind, all girls, pretty much the same size too, except for one really big mama, and she got away with her dorsal and tail still on." Agatha hesitated a moment. "Okay, make it 106 then, no biggie. But it's a little strange. Sandies don't usually live on this coast, and when I've caught them back east, they're usually farther offshore. Maybe they came in shallow to drop pups, but it doesn't matter, we got them. I guess there'll be some horny boy sharks in these waters tomorrow." Agatha opened a thick ledger titled "Catch Record, Stinky Wrinkle," and wrote down numbers seemingly at random. She then pulled a tattered journal from under the instrument panel, this one labeled log book, and recorded a different, more complete set of numbers. Closing the book, she started the engine, turned the boat around, and accelerated. As the flashing icon on the chart plotters exited the red marked reserve area, she flicked on running and deck lights. The wrinkle disappeared into the night, trailing a dense cloud of foul-smelling black smoke. And we thank you. I will happily entertain questions. And if I don't know the answer, I'll make it up. There's still, yeah, John, thank you.
That was powerful and hard to hear. Yeah.
Well, good. That's the object. The sharks get even. And basically the whole story is about them trying to get their fins back. They don't talk. For those of you who read the Orca novel, the sharks do not talk. At least not that we hear. Yeah,
So I imagine it's the big mama who sort of leads it.
very good. She does. She's an important character. There's nothing in those introductory chapters that doesn't come back 1 or 2 or 3 times later in the book. Just, that's,
And the boy.
and
The boy. who's-
well, Rowdy comes back. The Greenhorn is just a little, he has another cameo appearance before he gets killed. But Rowdy returns several times.
So the object of this would be to educate the public with this. And what would be your marketing promotional plan?
Thank you. Do you have one?
Well,
Oh.
it seems to me that, there's the obvious schools, libraries and, well, aquariums.
I'd love for it to be sold at an aquarium. The uphill climb for this book is that I've written a novel, and most of the people I would like to reach don't read novels. I promoted heavily on Twitter. I've joined all sorts of Twitter groups. I have found out that people who spend their time on Twitter don't read anything longer than 160 characters. But you keep trying and you hope it's going to connect somewhere, and one of the influencers will pick it up and say, and there are all sorts of sharp blogs on Twitter. One of them will pick it up. I'm sending 3 copies to people in hopes that they will, 1, read it, and 2, say, hey, this is a fun book, you ought to read it. And my hope is that I know shark finning is very unpopular, particularly with the American public. People who know about it find it really distasteful. And so even though we've got all these books and movies out there that are designed to scare and people watch them, those same people are slowly but surely coming around to the idea that maybe sharks shouldn't be treated quite as badly as they are. And that's my hope for target audience. Right now, the book is going through a couple of contests. If I can get some medallions on the cover and I can start promoting it, then we'll have some credibility. But it's, I tell myself I'm going to spend an hour every day promoting the book, and after about 10 minutes, I go back to working on the sequel to the Orca novel. Okay,
What's the publisher do that promotion?
you're looking at the publisher.
Oh. What about the other one?
You're looking at the publisher. I'm an independent author. I'm a member of the Alliance of Independent Authors, which is a wonderful website, blog, etc., that does just the sort of things, helps you, come up with ideas to promote, tells you contests to avoid because all they're doing is sucking in your money. Oh, the phone calls. At least once a week, sometimes more often than that, I get a phone call from somebody who can barely speak English, offering to promote my book at a book fair, an international book fair. I've had some say, is this Gene Helfamn, the author of Beyond the Human Realm? I've also recently got one, is Jenny there? And one of them was going to, for $3,000, I could have my book promoted on the crawler in Times Square on New Year's Eve. So for 10 seconds at 2 o'clock in the morning, they might put it across. Same sort of, some reason $3,000 seems to be going. There's an international book fair in Miami coming up, and one of these companies, these people can't speak English. What I always do when I get one of these phone calls is I say, send me an email. Tell me what your services are, what it'll cost me. Give me your pitch. And invariably, when I write back, I say, for free use of your services, I'll correct your English. I'll make you believable to authors, because right now this is so poorly written that no serious author would even consider using your services. No one is taking me up on it because they just churn these things out. There are people who are trying to make money off of people who are trying to make money off their books. It's, to me, it's a hobby. It's fun. Judy tolerates what I spend on it. And
What about the award people?
There's another one. So this is, the awards are real because so many people enter their books and they have this sort of series. They call it the first. You send in your a copy of your book, and it goes into the slush pile. And then if it makes it out of the slush pile, it goes into the long list, and from that it goes into the short list, and then it goes into the semifinals, and then it goes into the finals, and then you can get the award. So there is a filtration process, but all of them talk about all the different venues that they then publicize your book and your award. And it's a long list of, you just love to, but these various publishing houses and agents get hundreds of these a day, and ignore most of them, particularly if they come from independent authors or from one of these contests that definitely is subscribed to by independent authors. All of the money that there is goes through agents and publishing houses. And the standard line, and I'll start letting you all go to dinner now because it's almost an hour, is that get 100 refusals before you give up. And the most common response to an inquiry, a query, is nothing. Because again, these people are just deluged with stuff. And same thing happened when I was trying to promote the screenplay. I wrote to the people that put out these terrible movies. And here's a plot. But they just want to scare. They're not interested in the conservation message, unfortunately. Or at least that's what I think. Yeah.
Well, I'm currently having problems with nouns, but what is the black woman that has a TV show?
Oprah? Oh, I would love. I was thinking, Oprah lived on the orchis for a while. She'll love this book. But she has the folks out in front that filter stuff, that protect her gatekeepers, and getting through the gatekeepers.
Well, I have a friend who works for her kingdom in movies or something like that.
Yes.
And then,
This is closer than I've gotten before.
why don't you just start having people in book clubs start doing it?
I've done a number of book clubs. I love book clubs
Yeah.
because these are people who read carefully and love to critique books, and I don't mind being thrashed by a book club because having somebody read your book seriously enough that they want to discuss it is an absolute. I mean, authors love that, and nothing is better. I'll do a book club before I'll do anything, just because it's fun. It's just fun. I'm doing one on San Juan in April. There's a book club that is inviting me to do a reading and a discussion. Nikki.
My big question is, what do we have to do for the prize?
Say it again.
Open the cookie jar.
Oh.
Help yourself. Fossil shark.
On Oprah and you get a
Yeah. More than shark teeth. I have bracelets, Taylor Swift would love for you to exchange these at her concerts. And candy, yeah.
What have you ever talked to Karen Fisher?
I haven't.
Because she wrote that book.
Oh, yeah, no,
And it was
respect her.
going, I saw her on Canadian TV being interviewed on a late night talk show. I think she was scheduled for one in New York when 9/11 happened now.
Okay. Well, she had a publisher, and that's what publishers do. They
That's
get
the
you
big-
book tours and they promote the books because they're making money off it,
Right.
if at all possible. Yeah, that's the whole thing. And getting a publisher, I've tried. I'm gonna try with the sequel. Judy's made me promise I'm gonna try with the sequel. We'll see what happens. Now that I've got a track record. Okay.
I have another idea.
Oh, okay.
So, a close friend of mine published a book of poetry. He had a publisher, and it was called Eleanor. The book was 57 poems by Eleanor Roosevelt. And the rollout was all set up at Hyde Park the day they closed down the country.
Oh.
And then 2 weeks later, she scheduled to have hour-long talks at the big bookseller convention, which was Kansas. And so I bought like 54 of the books. I mean, they're that good. And I sent them to my friends, mostly women. And then we set up a Zoom call.
Oh,
And
nice.
she did her roll out on my book with my friends.
You're an angel. Actually, I finished the Yorka novel during the pandemic. It was a great time to write.
Yes.
You know, we were so minimally affected here. It's almost embarrassing. I feel guilt, you know, survivor's guilt about how little it affected us. We didn't have kids we had to homeschool, who were bound to eat us or we would eat them. But you know, I've heard so many stories of what other people suffered through the pandemic, and that's another one right there. Okay, it's boom, an hour. I promised an hour, no more.
It's one more.
Yeah, well, yeah, sorry, a minute late. Thank you all for coming. And, oh, I got, no, sure, if you want to.
Huh?
Would you three want those two?
Sure, I'll sign them. I can give you a bookmark.
Oh, my word.
Produced here on Lopez.